Welcome to the Foundation Series, your deep dive into startup compensation with industry leaders from across the startup world. Join me, Matt McFarlane, a people operations leader turned compensation specialist, as we uncover the strategies and practices driving success in tech startups around the world. Hear insights from heads of people, founders, and experts as we explore how to build robust compensation frameworks that not only fuel growth and retention, but do so in the dynamic startup environment that we all know and love. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to the Foundation Series. Today, really excited to welcome you on board. Sarika Lamont, we've tic-tacked on LinkedIn, engaged with one another. I've been such a big fan of some of the things that you've had to say around compensation, and it's really nice to see somebody else out there fighting the good fight around some of the things that I genuinely, believe in when it comes to pay practices and things like that. So it's so amazing to have you on the show. I'd love you to spend a few seconds just for those who aren't familiar with you, introducing yourself, who you are, where you're from, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you for having me, Matt. I definitely have followed you for a long time and always loved everything. A lot of alignment in what you say around compensation and how you approach it. So this was well-timed to have this conversation. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarika Lamont. I am the Vice President of People and Culture at Vidyard. Vidyard is a AI-enabled go-to-market tool, not just for sales, so sort of like end-to-end from marketing, sales. Yes, we have a little bit of everything, but we have a lot in the ways of like video messaging, video hosting, video-based follow-ups, et cetera. And so Vidyard's based in Canada, but I am actually based in Virginia in the US, about 45 minutes outside of DC. So I work for a predominantly Canadian company, which has been a very interesting experience. I've been here for over 2.5 years. I lead all things people and culture and all the things that sit underneath that. And now I also lead AI and automation enablement and innovation across the company. So a lot of really cool things going on in that world. So it's not just specific to what we're doing on the people side as it relates to AI tooling, but also how are we looking at accelerating execution through operational discipline by way of like AI and automation. So really, really interesting time right now in the role for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that for me was like such a little bonus point when I first reached out to you wanting to have a chat, was to discover that you've kind of been given this remit to lead AI adoption and uptake across the business. I'd love to spend just a few seconds setting the scene. Like, tell me how did this come about? I know even when we spoke, actually, you were like, the more you started talking about it, there were some people who were like, oh, I can't believe it's like, the department of +1, we kind of always get lumped with everything, but your take on it has been very different. Tell me a bit about the approach, how it kind of emerged and how it's going so far.
Yeah, I think it originally emerged, it was pretty organic. Obviously, AI hit OpenAI and all that happened, a little over a year ago now, and it was still pretty early on. But I don't know, it was probably late last year. I was chatting with my CEO and it's like, do you think I should be focusing more on AI enablement in terms of like the organization and like making sure that we understand who's using it, how they're using it, encouraging people to use it, teaching them, enabling them. Do you think that's something they should be thinking about in my role? And he's like, well, I don't know. I think everyone's really handling that at a functional level. Like I think all the different executives are really managing that within their own, remit. So you probably don't need to worry about it, but you definitely continue doing what you're doing with your own team. As we were already, chatting with other companies like Kinfolk as an example. I know that you know them well as, kind of leveraging some of their early on tools, and they've evolved since then. But then as time sort of went on, as we engaged with our board a little bit more, as we really thought about our own product strategy at Vidyard and really focused a lot of our investment in our long-term strategy around building AI capability inside of our own product, I think it started to become clearer and clearer that this probably did rise to the occasion of like a really focused company priority. Because while we were seeing pockets of people leveraging it, I would say probably my team and the engineering team the most. Because I think as myself and then our CTO and his team were very maniacally focused on it, knowing that, I think engineers and developers have obviously seen a lot of lift in that pretty quickly. and are just well-versed in using new software. So, but I think it then became more of a conversation. It's like, this might need to be more of a focal area, especially as we are a leaner team in certain places, and we are thinking about how we're going to get more efficient and how we are going to accelerate execution in particular areas. Where can we see a lot more lift and leverage? And I think as I was peeking under the hood a bit more, of course, part of my role and part of my team's role is to align with where the business is, right? That's how we are going to be productive. That's how we're going to be seen as a value, like an enabler of the business versus just like this, line item on our budget sheet. We were seeing a lot of opportunities, a lot of like drudgery in the work that a lot of our teams are doing across sales or CS and marketing. And I think because we're so close with the business and we're seeing those things, I could peek under the hood a little bit more. I'm like, that we could do this differently. And have you thought about it this way? So that's it sort of organically happened. And then when we were planning for our fiscal year, so our fiscal year runs May to April. So, months ago, as we were thinking more about what fiscal 26 was going to look like for us, it got brought up. And so I was like, hey, you know what? Like, let me run this priority. Like, I think it's not just about tools. It's, to me, even more so about a mindset shift that we have to go through with our employees and ourselves as leaders. Is like, this is so new and so different. And there's so much fear baked into this use of AI because all the movies that people have seen, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity to think about the cultural change and the change management that will have to happen in helping people understand, like, there's upscaling, there's a mindset shift, there's a level of bringing people along on this journey, on this sort of change curve, just as anything else. And so I think it should live truly in the people space. But and I say that as like, I think it makes sense for me to lead it as the VP of people, but knowing that it is a very cross-functional effort, meaning I would not be doing this independent of our IT and security team, especially.
Of course.
Or working with all the different leaders and understanding how they're using it, how they're not using it, and how can we help. And I will say we're probably, I would say we started this back in March. Even though our fiscal year started in May. So we're a number of months in. I've learned a lot. That I will tell you, my number one cross-functional partner is our IT and security team.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And we can dig into that where we need to. But yeah, it's been really exciting. It's probably given me a lot more. It's probably rejuvenated something in me. Like
okay. I guess it's a fundamentally new thing, right? Like you've been leading people teams for a while, right? Like, so, the pillars of that aren't necessarily new, but AI is a totally new dimension to that, right?
It's a new dimension, but I think you and I have talked about this. I've been working now, 22 years, but I don't have an HR background. Like I didn't start my career in HR. I started in sales and marketing. Then I went into management consulting. Then I went into management and consulting at a small company that was fortunately growing really quickly. So it became startup, scale up. And I was there for a number of years and went from 70 employees to 1,700 employees. And I did a lot in the operational space. And once upon a time, and I will probably still want to go down that path, but I had always sort of saw myself as like, okay, at one point I was like, I'm going to start my own, management consulting or government contracting firm. And then eventually I was like, I want to be a COO because I was doing so many things across so many functions and really thinking about how the operational elements work together. And so I thought I would, funny enough, one of the offers that I had when I was also had the Vidyard offer in hand 2.5 years ago was an offer to be a COO of a government contracting firm. I ultimately chose to come to Vidyard. I think it has like awakened that part of me that I really always enjoyed doing. I'm a connector, and I kind of got away from that a little bit as I was learning the whole HR space over the last number of years. And I've come back to that in my role at Vidyard just by nature of like where they needed me to be. And my CTO said this to me the other day. He's like, you're a connector. Like, you're really good at seeing really what's going on across the business in all the functions, and people have a way of just like opening up to you so that you get a peek under the hood in a way that we don't as your fellow executives. We don't see the same things you do. And so like that's your superpower. Like you need to continue to leverage that as your superpower. And it also really has been helpful in the AI automation role because it's fun to connect the dots.
Well, I was going to say, being able to have that purview and actually be able to see the opportunities to bring two things that were maybe disparate together, especially in an environment where, AI really is, I think, in so many ways limited by our imagination. So being able to see across the business and see, one thing and a potential solution and potentially direct some focus towards that seems like it would be really, well placed for you to be in that role then.
Yeah, I was feeling a little burnt out. I think just when it's like just the same, same type of things I was dealing with, but this has been definitely exciting. I mean, definitely it adds a whole other layer of complexity to my role. And there's this other thing that I'm now like, leading and having to be focused on from an organizational perspective outside of just my team. But I have such a great, solid team and great leaders. It's been great for me to like lean in another area and bridge the gap there. So yeah, it's awesome.
Well, let's dive into that because I think it's such a pertinent issue. And I think we touched on this a little bit before we started recording. But I mean, to me, when I think of AI and AI adoption, there's kind of like, there's tools that you're using. So like Kinvolt's a great example where AI is kind of part of it, right? Like it has some functionality. But then there's also like an experimentation aspect to AI and being able to come up with new and unique ways to maybe leverage it that you potentially weren't before. And so constantly being able to maybe experiment or innovate in some of these ways. But then there's kind of this other element to it. And you mentioned like, burnout, but it's well-being, right? And we're starting to see the emergence of some of these things where it's like, where there are people and particularly at the junior level where there's almost an over-reliance on AI that it could be potentially impacting critical thinking. There's those who are using it to take a lot of the maybe like easier work, administrative type of stuff away, which means that maybe their like cognitive load is actually increasing because they are focused more on that sort of higher order work. What are the things that go through your head when you think about like AI readiness, when on the one hand, we really need to be pushing people to be continuously trying stuff and embracing and adopting, but on the other, we're starting to see potentially the emergence of like the repercussions of going too far with that. How do you think about that from a workplace perspective?
So it's interesting because I look at this a little bit differently. I do agree that there's probably in pockets and in places an over-reliance on AI, but I would say that's probably more the generative AI piece of AI, maybe not as much as the agentic AI, because that's even newer. But Gen AI, like if it's not used, like one thing I talk a lot about with my own team, but in my own organization is, and I put a whole guide actually out around this is, and my CTO said this to me, AI is really good at making you believe that they're right about everything. And they're not always right. Right. And I've caught my own chat GPT or whatever. And well, that's not exactly accurate. And let me tell you why. And like, I've had like conversations with my own AI.
It's always hilarious when you call it out, isn't it? It's like, oh, you're correct.
Yeah. Like, they're like, well, okay, I could see that, Sarika. But if you thought about it, I'm like, well, no, because this is the data. Like you're not actually paying it right. But it is funny. But I think what I'm trying to teach my own organization is you still need to have critical thinking involved in how you're prompting and how you are validating the output that it's giving you. But if you're just taking AI and generative AI at face value, then yes, it does become an over-reliance in a negative way. Yeah. But I don't think that's the intention of generative AI because remember, it's learning by by what it's ingesting from us. Yeah. And so I think, but there is still that element of like, you need to question, you need to really validate, you need to make sure that the information is given. Does this make sense? Does this connect back to your original question or your original prompt? And does this like really tie back to like the environment in which you're working in? Like, does this, if you're asking specific questions about something within your organization, does this actually connect back to your organization? And so I think if it's done right and it's questioned right, you actually end up using a lot more of your critical thinking skills. And with the emergence of agentic AI, there's a lot that agentic AI is doing. Like even if I just think about it in the people space, it's automating a lot of this like low hanging fruit, a lot of this administrative work. And quite frankly, it's the administrative work for me and my team that has created a lot more of the burnout because it's like we're expected to be strategic in the way that we're aligning what we do and the work that we do and with the business. We're expected, and I expect my team, I don't care how junior you are, I'm expecting my team to partner with the business, to ask thoughtful questions, to understand where the business is coming from, regardless of what role you're playing. If you're a recruiter, like you need to understand what problems we're solving for so that you can help them curate the job description effectively. Like you need to know enough about our strategy. And I give you all a lot of context, probably more than a lot of leaders give their folks, because I want you to be a really great thought partner with the business. But what ends up causing a lot more of the burnout and what I've seen is that like I'm doing that and that takes a lot of critical thinking, that takes a lot of deep thinking. But then it's like I have this thing over that's like weighing on my shoulders or my head. It's like, oh my God, I have all this administrative stuff I have to
the
do.
insurmountable admin.
But how cool would it be if I could just automate a lot of that work so that I don't have to worry. I don't have that overarching looming over myself or my team, because the agentic component of that can take that off and then allows my team more of the space to think. Because that's what really causes my burnout, is like the task list of things that's growing and growing and growing, mixed with the very people-centric work that I'm doing that takes a lot of my time. And that's where I want to be spending my time. And so I agree that there probably is an over-reliance, but I think that comes back to HR executives or just the leaders that are driving this type of AI transformation inside of the business, that we need to be having these types of conversations so that we're teaching our organization sort of the right and wrong ways to be using, whether it's Gen AI or agentic AI, and where they can leverage and automate work through these toolings. And not everything has to be an AI tool, by the way. Like, not every tool that we're using to automate is necessarily an AI tool. But what it has done, this whole notion of AI, has just created a mindset shift for a lot of people to think differently about their work and think about where they can remove the drudgery in their day-to-day and where can I automate. Or maybe it's not even automation. Maybe it's just because you're thinking through it differently. Maybe I rethink what we're doing as a whole. Why do we have these meetings? Or should this meeting be an hour meeting? Should it just be a 30-minute meeting? Or I don't know, we have a video-based product. Do I really need to be meeting everybody to give you this information? Or could I just give you a 5-minute Vidyard and send it to you? And like that would, and save me time. So it's sort of like just a reimagining the way we work and how we work and what we're doing at work every day is what I think the beauty of what AI has given, at least for myself, and how I'm looking at it and positioning it inside of my own organization.
You know that feeling when comp decisions land on your desk and you're thinking, is this actually competitive? Most people in finance teams are working off data that's already out of date or spread across 5 different spreadsheets. It's painful and it slows you down. That's why I want to tell you about Pave. Pave gives you real-time compensation data from more than 8,300 companies, not just last year's survey, actual live market signals. So you can make calls with confidence, not guesswork. You can benchmark pay, price roles, manage your ranges, run your merit cycle, and even explain total rewards to employees, all in the same place. No tab hopping, no stitching things together. And they're rolling out new AI tools that take some of the heavy lifting off your plate. Think smarter job matching, faster merit reviews, less admin, and better decisions. If you want to level up how you run comp, check out pave.com. That's PAVE.com. Again, pave.com.
Yeah, makes sense. So I guess the takeaway is don't always take it at face value, despite the sort of confidence that's coming through from the AI. You obviously need to sense check it, and there's the critical thinking element in there, especially if that sort of company strategy and company context is coming down the pipeline. But I agree, there's probably a real reduction in that sort of whiplash that you get from having to shift from writing a contract to suddenly trying to coach somebody about a particular thing. It's kind of probably closing the gap or reducing the frequency with which you do that. I know I personally, when I have to pull myself out of a spreadsheet to then start to have this like really strategic conversation, sometimes I'm just like, whoa, where am I? Like I just feel lost. So,
it's a lot of context and code switching. I think that's sort of like what it means to be in HR, quite frankly.
Definitely.
But I think it is allowing us to, I have seen it remove a bit more of the noise in my day-to-day in some of these things, because I'm finding ways to simplify and automate things for my team, for others, our executive team, our senior leadership team, right? How we're getting and surfacing and sharing information and doing that in a way, because we're remote first too. And so, it's been very interesting, the things that I've learned in the last, 5 or so months, kind of digging into this, like how important documentation is, which is sort of like a critical principle of remote work working well, and how much people really hate doing that. But then it's like, oh, but there's all these tools now that can like do it, build Notion pages for you, and, buy a Google slide deck. So now that's saving time. And my God, what that does then for the organization is, allows us to move with a bit more acceleration in places and not spending our time in these areas. So it's been it's exciting, but again, it is also can be exhausting, because I'm I'm in a lot of demos lately, like learning about different tools and how
I can imagine. Yeah, you want to stay across it.
Yeah.
The better question is, are you seeing the reduction in admin as the sort of biggest uplift or the biggest impact by AI on the people function so far? Or do you think it's somewhere else?
I think right now it's definitely reducing a lot of the admin load. I think it's also improving. But if you think about it, it depends on the experience. So like one of the first things we did, and it happened to be with Kinfolk, is onboarding. Was like, how does my team, we knew that there was going to be an async experience and a synchronous experience, and we needed both. And we wanted an asynchronous experience for the pre-boarding and doing more of a pre-boarding experience to get people excited once they sign their offer and they can sort of like serve information about who we are, our culture, like a lot of really cool videos from any of us on the executive team to know who we are before you walk in. So you feel this sort of like, I don't know, this level of like comfort and this level of like integration before day one, which I think is such an incredible part of the experience. But there's a lot of admin that goes into onboarding, as you know. There's the scheduling of the touch points with like your hiring manager or the team or people on my HR team or leaders or whatever. Like there's like, making sure that all the documentation is done and checking the box on all of those things. There's the actual experience of like like having the one-on-ones or like having the day one onboarding experience and learning about benefits. So like, how could we curate a more positive experience for everybody involved, for the new hire to feel more integrated and understanding of what our culture is day one, and self-serving some of that information that we don't have to like bombard them with that on day one, and we can just focus on other elements and get them ramped up more on like their role, in that first week. There's the getting the hiring managers to do the onboarding plan and like giving them coaching on how to do that, but self-serve stuff. Right. And there's so much admin stuff there. And like what we were able to do with Kinfolk, even before, actually, this is even before their agentic AI piece, offering came about. It was more with like run books. And that really did a lot of automation. And that's what really started getting me thinking more about, wow, okay, we could connect a lot more of these systems. We were already seeing HR tech and other platforms doing a lot more in the flow of work, this notion of flow of work, right? And like if you use Slack or if you use Teams, but now they were kind of leveling up our thinking on, okay, we can curate these experiences to self-serve information, but also like nudge people at the right time, nudge managers at the right time. And so what we inevitably saw was documentation, like all the paperwork that needed to be done was being done more accurately and more consistently and quickly. We were seeing hiring managers actually putting their onboarding plans together. We were seeing hiring managers actually doing their checklist of things and following that to completion. We're seeing that increase in a shorter amount of period of time, which then was having a net positive experience for the new hire and was having a better experience for my people team, less things that they had to go, right? Because it connected with our HRIS with HiBob and Slack and all these other tools. So that was the first sort of, I guess, our first foray into like, oh, okay, so this is how AI could work. And then it was the knowledge surfacing, right? We could build a chat bot right inside of our Slack feature and like ask, hey, Can AI, could you tell me where I could find information on like on our unlimited, time off policy? Like, what does that entail? And now you could get that. You could ask the bot and it would pull the information from our Confluence page rather than someone having to go look for the Confluence information. But now we're taking it even step further. And it's now the agentic component is like, great. How, okay, hey, I know there's a travel while working policy. Tell me about that policy. Okay, how do I put in a request for that? Great, let us walk you through that. And now you could just put the information right in that bot and it will then surface the information into our HiBob account and ping all the right people to do all the right steps. But like you no longer have to have people pinging other people, which then ends up taking a lot more time. And so like that's now how we're seeing it all. Now we're seeing the dots get connected.
And
we're seeing how all of these sort of elements connect.
Amazing.
That's right.
I hear what you mean now when you say then, the noise is starting to go away. That's even just what you said there is a lot of, that's a person's job, right? That's a lot of stuff.
Well, I made a decision this year that I didn't need a people ops coordinator.
Yeah.
And I could level up people ops coordinator to be maybe focus more on being a TA specialist or maybe just being a people specialist so they could learn more about other areas, and they're going to end up providing more value to the business because I don't need them doing this administrative, these scheduling of calls and,
Yeah, it's a
following
real
up.
lift in terms of their job, right? Yeah.
Right. But now they can focus on things that are more value add to the business and more value add to the overall employee's experience.
Yeah.
And so there's the beauty in what is, at least I can, that's more of what I see it doing for the people, people in HR.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and I know that there's similar types of experiences happening in all different functions in our business right now with their own sort of AI tooling that they're leveraging.
Amazing. I love it. This has been an amazing conversation. Last one for me to round this one out. What would be one, or if there's someone that's starting to think about, okay, I really need to be getting on the AI bandwagon here. What's one thing that I could be doing? What's a tip or a tool or a workflow or something they could be, putting in place pretty quickly?
So the first thing I would tell people who are a little bit more hesitant or maybe haven't is that you just got to start somewhere, anywhere. Like pick up ChatGPT, free ChatGPT, start asking it questions and start seeing what it will surface. And when I think about a people person who's maybe a little bit more has done that already, and they're like, okay, well, how do I start on the automating side? I would say take a look at the different processes that you have, and take a look at maybe processes that get used a lot, that you get pinged a lot on. One thing that my team gets pinged on a lot about is employment verification letter, right? It's such an easy thing to automate and spit out a document. And so that's low-hanging fruit that could save time, but it's also not, and it's probably lower impact, but it's a good way to kind of test and learn and experiment with. Because it's such low impact, it's not going to hurt the business in any way. And so that's another thing, is you kind of want to start small and learn and experiment from that before you start getting to some of the bigger automated workflows that are a little bit more involved and touch a bunch of different systems in and out of HR. I would say start very small with smaller impact and experiment there. And don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't, and honestly, use your IT team. They're really great. They really understand this. At least my IT team here at Vidyard has been freaking phenomenal. And they don't make me feel dumb with any of my questions. And it's been super helpful to help me think about how our systems have been connected. So I would say kind of start there and use the people that are at your disposal in your own organization.
Yeah, nice. So ask around. Don't try and change the world overnight. Just start small. What are the simple use
start
cases?
Small. I mean, follow me on LinkedIn, because I'm trying to share out loud. I shared some things today. Ping me, honestly, truly. I love this stuff, and I'm learning a lot even by talking about it. And there's also a lot of really great webinars. Zapier actually did Brandon Summit from sorry, Brendan, if I pronounced your last name wrong, but he's the chief people officer at Zapier, and he just did a whole great webinar on HR and AI and HR, AMA, and he puts a lot of stuff out in public, so you can sort of think through, oh wow, okay, I didn't think about that workflow. Whether or not you use Zapier or not, I just think it'll get your juices flowing. He and Bonnie,
the ideas.
Their TA leader, puts a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff being put out in public on LinkedIn right now to kind of get your juices flowing, also on where could I start if you're kind of stuck in a rut.
That's it. Yeah. Find the influencers, find the examples. There's plenty of newsletters out there as well, right? That can help start to give people ideas around ways to apply this. So yeah, start small and then get going. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the chat. I really appreciate it. These tips have been incredible. And we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Foundation Series. Make sure to head over to our website to subscribe to the Foundation Series for monthly editions featuring future interviews on startup compensation. In each edition, we'll explore the different strategies, trends, and challenges faced by startups around the world. If you have a burning topic you'd like me to cover, or a standout guest that you want to hear from, drop me an email so I can dive deeper into the compensation topics that matter most to you. Join me next time as we continue to uncover the strategies and practices driving success in global tech startups around the world. Thanks for listening.